All right. So today we're very blessed to have Dr. Sanjay with us. As I said, he had spoken down at our Orange County event, and he has a whole program called Well 12. And we did kick that off and do an ambassador program with him through C-Suite. And so he is a board certified cardiologist with over 20 years of experience in cardiology, and he's a certified practitioner of functional medicine as well. He's performed countless invasive procedures. He came to recognize the true healing goes beyond treating symptoms. It requires addressing the root cause of the illness. That insight led him to embrace a more holistic approach, integrating lifestyle, nutrition, and mental well being into his medical practice. And so that's what we're here to discuss today. And so, welcome, Sanjay. Anything else you want to
Hey,
add? Maybe I left
no,
out?
thank you so much. Dad of triplet girls who are 16. They're soft rising junior, or I guess they started junior year 2 days ago, I guess. So that kind of keeps me grounded. If you ever have if you ever as a dad develop an ego, have a teenage daughter, and that'll get deflated right away, right? So they keep me real for sure. But thank you for having me, Beth, and thank you for being here. And I'm so excited to talk about the program, the Well 12 program, and really health in general. And I can just we're a small group, so feel free to ask questions. We've got the chat kind of rocking on the side here, so if you have questions there, just raise your virtual hand. Happy to chat. But I'll just kind of talk about where this came from, or my epiphany was. I practiced as an interventional cardiologist for about 20 years. And so, for those of you who don't know, an interventional cardiologist is the procedure cardiologist. So, I'm the doctor that would treat heart attacks, put in balloons and stents and heart valves and all these things, rather than an open surgical procedure through the artery in the leg or artery in the wrist. And as opposed to many of your business models, the health business model is a little bit different, right? And in the sense that as a physician, my goal is to stop repeat business, right? So for a lot of you out there, if you don't have repeat customers, you could look and say, hey, what's wrong? What's going on? Is there a problem in our customer experience? Do we need to A/B test our marketing or what's happening? Whereas in the cardiology world or in the health world, or at least as it should be, we're really aiming to never have a customer in the first place for advanced procedures, but definitely if you have a procedure, be it a stent or a balloon or a surgery or, XYZ, whatever it may be, we don't want you necessarily to have to come back, right? And I think similarly, patients as customers of healthcare don't want to necessarily come back, right? If you've had one surgery, oh, looks like my microphone switched for some reason here. Sorry. So if you have, you can hear me okay?
Yes.
There's a weird hiccup on my side. But so for people who've had a surgery, had a procedure, you don't want to have it again, right? If you've had brain surgery, you don't want to go back. If you've had cancer surgery, you don't want to go back. And so as I looked at my practice developing over the 15 years or so at that point, as I started to see this, I was wondering, why do I have people coming back with second heart attacks or third heart attacks, or I've put stents in and they need to have heart bypass surgery? And this is despite the best efforts of conventional medicine, of what we do, getting your blood pressure and blood sugar and cholesterol regulated. And I realized there's something more to the equation. And in the kind of milieu of all of this, realizing that as conventionally trained physicians, we really don't have a lot in terms of diet and lifestyle offerings. And I think of my father-in-law who had heart bypass surgery the year after I got married. So 22 years ago, he had heart surgery. And he's diabetic, and he went to go see his physician probably about 6 months or so ago. And now he is frankly diabetic and has all these things going on. And his doctor's advice was, well, eat less and exercise more, right? I mean, it's like a fortune cookie, kind of in terms of the number of characters, barely even a tweet, but that is the extent to which doctors get that training. And I realized there is something that we really need to look at here, because if you look at health KPIs, right? You all look at your business, and Jennifer, you probably look at your financial KPIs of business and say, you know what, this isn't performing, that's not performing. Get rid of that division, get rid of this division, double down on this division, whatever it may be. When it comes to our health, we need to think of this very similarly, and we are failing abysmally in the conventional world, right? When you look at the statistics, we spend more per capita on patient than almost any other industrialized country. We have like the third worst outcomes. And a lot of that isn't necessarily that we don't have technology, but we're not focusing on the right things. We're putting all of our money in the high tech, kind of end of life things that we have available to us, which are amazing. I'm not a denier of the advancements of medicine at all. But what I think we need to do is shift our focus then into diet, lifestyle, and some of these other components. And so through that realization, I fell into the world of functional medicine, which carries a lot of emotional kind of weight when you say that word. People don't really understand it, or people tend to react strongly pro or con. But essentially, what we're trying to do with functional medicine is optimize your body's natural healing processes through diet, through lifestyle, sometimes supplementation. And I just fell in love with that model of healthcare, and I realized this is what's missing in what we do. So I went through. If anybody of you have heard of Dr. Mark Hyman, he's one of the founders of this movement. He created something called the Institute of Functional Medicine, and I went through and, as Beth mentioned in the bio, became one of the only certified cardiologists in the United States in this, because I feel that of all the disease states, cardiovascular seems to be, at least in my mind, the one area that can really fall, like, can really go to zero if we're optimizing diet and lifestyle. So I think it becomes very important from a cardiology standpoint to do this. And so I fell in love with it, learned. I see that Darlene only sees functional medicine doctors now, and that's great, because I think that when you're seeing a physician like an MD or DO trained in conventional medicine and functional medicine, you get the best of both worlds, right? You get one and the other. So as a result, I created a program called Well 12, initially for the audience that's complete opposite of everybody on this call. I initially created it for men between the ages of 35 and 55. Why those guys? Because as a cardiologist, seeing heart attacks, often I'd get that patient at age 52 or 53 came in with a heart attack, and I'd ask them, when was the last time you had your labs checked? When was the last time you saw a doctor? And their response would be a little bit more times than I was comfortable with. Well, I had my high school football physical, and that was the last time I saw a doctor. And here you are, a 52-year-old person. That was, 20 some years ago. There's a big disconnect. And so initially, this Well 12 program was started to optimize men's health, but then as I had more women kind of joining as partners and support, or going through cardiovascular diseases of their own, because newsflash, heart disease is the number one killer of women in the United States, not breast cancer or any of these kind of other things, but it's good old fashioned heart disease. What I saw was, remarkably, when you get the body to work correctly, when you take away inflammation, when you start balancing the body, when you start taking away something called visceral fat, which is not the pinchable, lovable stuff, but the fat that sits around our organs. It's like suffocating our organs, right? And that's metabolically active fat, and that's what causes hormonal disruptions. So when you have someone who has really severe menopause symptoms, well, what's happening is that the visceral fat is secreting something called, not to get too nerdy, but it's secreting something called sex hormone binding globulin that prevents whatever hormones, precious hormones you have from working correctly. And so as a result, you get these weird, crazy zigs and zags of hormones that lead to things like hot flashes, or you get permeability issues in the brain that lead to brain fog and all of these things. And as people were doing, think like three simple pillars of the program: optimize your sleep, optimize your stress, and optimize your diet, right? Easier said than done on the diet side, I know, but as we did these things, it was amazing to me to see how much people felt better. And so I think of a woman who was initially a nurse that I'd worked with 25 years ago, found me through the internet, and she did the program. She had been vegan for, I think, 14 or 15 years, which I think for most of us, we equate vegans with some higher level of spiritual awareness, and they're super healthy and all these things. But she was still falling apart. The brain fog, the hair loss, all the things that happen. She did the program, ate an anti-inflammatory diet, got better sleep, learned how to get better sleep. We did breathing exercises to monitor her stress, and she dropped about 35 pounds being vegan, right? But I think more importantly, so many of the symptoms, the random aches and pains that she was waking up with, the headaches, the migraines got better. The, and I mean, the weight gain, or the weight loss rather, was I say it's a side effect of wellness and health, but for her, it was all those other inflammatory symptoms that got better. Her hot flashes improved, her mood got better. She was more present with her family. She's a single mom, so a lot of stress associated with that. But she said that, I just feel like I'm a better mom, better person, better at work, all these things. And it didn't involve a pill, and I think so many times when we look at health, we are, the conventional world has done a great job of gaslighting people into thinking, oh, you know what, you have a symptom, you need to take a pill, right? But as we look at things like particularly depression, when you look at the actual improvement in depression on SSRIs like Prozac or Zoloft or some of these that you may have heard of, it's actually very minimal in terms of any sort of long-term effect. You get a short-term kind of improvement, but long-term, it's remarkable how quickly those objective measures of improvement drop off. But when you look at diet and lifestyle optimization, rebalancing the bacteria in your gut, getting this inflammation away, improving what's called neuroinflammation, which is inflammation in your brain because you've got leaky vessels and things like that. All that stuff gets better. And for me, for the thousands of heart attacks I probably treated in the course of my conventional career, this is really what speaks to me as being so impactful, is that not only are we, I'm not just treating cardiovascular issues, which we certainly are, but really kind of more holistically looking at clients, looking at patients, and improving so many different systems to where your body just works again. So it's pretty remarkable. So I think, Beth, was that from your question? Or am I just so boxing
No,
here? I don't even remember where we started with this, but it's been amazing, and that's why I love partnering with organizations like yours, for like in C-suite, because high functioning people are oftentimes the one that notice variances in performance the quickest, right? Like if you're Michael Phelps and you're swimming, one length of the pool to the other, and all of a sudden you drop a half of a second, to most humans, that's not a big deal, right? But for Michael Phelps, a half a second is the difference between a gold medal and going to the Olympics at all, right? At that level. So as you guys are performing at such high levels, dealing with thousands of binary decisions a day, thinking about more than one project, kind of managing all of these things, it's oftentimes the higher level execs and the higher functioning folks that will see ahead of time, man, you know what? I feel like I just missed a step, like, and we've all had that moment. I don't have them here where your glasses on your head and you're wondering where your glasses are, right? Like, or where are my keys? And they're in my pocket. That happens to everybody, right? But I think it becomes particularly important as we look at people who are making high level decisions that have, multiple consequences, that we really need to get people on the top of their game. And all of these health issues like aches and pains and all that stuff, I think of them as those background apps like on your phone, like all of a sudden you look at your phone and the battery went from like 80 to like 20%. And you're like, oh, let me just get rid of these background apps, right? Because my GPS is still going, or for me, I don't know if you guys use Life 360 to keep track of your kids. My kids just started driving, so we had that on. Like I realized, oh man, that app is really draining a lot of my battery, so I'll only use it when I'm in the app or whatever. And so now I can manage it a lot better to manage my overall energy. Similarly, when you've got like neck pain, that drains you. You may not be conscious of it. When you're not sleeping and your brain isn't recovering overnight, that drains you and you have less reserve. You don't even realize it. When you are emotionally, physically exhausted, you're more snappy, right? I mean, I don't know. I
yeah.
can't speak for everybody here, but I can just speak to me. Right? Is that, yeah, if I don't sleep, like when I was practicing and I had a 2 in the morning heart attack, and then I had to be in clinic the next day all day and I got like an hour of sleep, I would tell my assistant, yeah, you know what? I had to put my cranky pants on this morning. So just be kind with me, right? Like, because when you're not feeling well, your brain is just not going to fire well, right? So I feel like the consequences of what I do now in terms of making really people feel holistically better is just so impactful, not just for them as an individual, but we show up better in our work. We show up better in our families. We're better moms. We're better dads. We're better chief financial officers. We're better therapists. We're better anything. And when you look at folks as well who are like undergoing therapy or undergoing executive coaching or whatever it may be, for those of you who are coaches out there or therapists out there or in some sort of a coaching type related field, how many times have you told your client the same thing? You know what we need to do is we need to retrain our thinking and approach it this, that way, or the other. And it's like putting seeds on cement, right? Like you have the same conversation week over week, and you're like, oh man, when will this person get this, right? When will it hit? And what we may not be realizing is there may be a biological issue going on with them, right? There may be a medical thing their brain has got so much bandwidth devoted to that back pain or that neck pain or that chronic inflammation or whatever it may be that they just don't have the gas to be able to, meaning the mental gas, the ability to focus on the coaching or whatever it may be. So I actually work with a lot of clients of therapists. I'm not a therapist myself. I don't, I don't have that skill set, but when we get people who are going to therapists who are doing the program feeling better, once their biological inflammation and the biological issues are calmed down, they're mentally more aware and they're mentally able to make the jumps and and get the healing and the transitions going that really need to happen because now you're planting those seeds on more fertile soil, right? So it's just these crazy consequences that I never thought of when I left my conventional practice, but I really do feel like I'm just making humans better, which is awesome.
Great. So, what is Well 12 and how does the program
Yeah.
work?
So, Well 12 is my 12-week program based on 12 pillars of wellness. So, most of us just think of health as wellness, right? So, we think of in the cardiology world, for instance, blood pressure, blood sugar, cholesterol, right? Those are the only three numbers I would care about. But there's mental, there's do you feel safe, right? I've met like a handful of people where the first question I ask is, do you feel safe? And they tell me no. And then before we've even talked about anything else, we need to get that feeling of safety. There's connection, there's emotional, there's dealing with like big T and little t traumas in the past, financial. There's all these other kind of areas and aspects that in the conventional world we don't think of. That I mean, I can't say that I'm going to get you a job in Well 12, meaning that will take care of your financial wellness, right? That's not coming soon to a program near you, but just the awareness of what's going on and that insight. I think oftentimes, particularly like I said, for high functioning people, getting that insight, shining that light on those dark areas of our existence that we don't like to shine light on, but then now you can kind of see, oh, I see how this is connected to that. Really makes a difference. So it's a much more holistic look at patients or clients, I should say. And in the 12-week program, it's all online. So regardless of where you're at, you can participate. And I've had people in all the time zones and actually outside of the US participate as well. But it's an online program where we are giving you the tools that you need. And like I said, the three main pillars are stress, sleep, and diet. So on the diet side, I've designed what's called the cardiometabolic anti-inflammatory diet. So of course, being a cardiologist, it's designed to really help the vascular system, but also to address all the inflammation that goes on inside of us. And I was just speaking to a nurse practitioner yesterday, who's someone who is very involved in healthcare, and she did not realize that foods can cause inflammation. So there's allergy, right? Like, so let's say like a bee sting is a perfect example, right? There are some people who, when they get stung by a bee, they just say ow, right? And they pull out the stinger or whatever. And there's other people where their throat closes, right? Now, the throat closing is an allergy, which is an extreme reaction. But when you get a bee sting, it hurts, right? That's a sensitivity that we have. So similarly, there are foods that we can eat that we are sensitive to, but not necessarily allergic to. So a great example for me is peanuts. I used to eat a ton of peanuts. I didn't have throat closing issues or anything like that. But as I started learning about my body, I saw that when I ate peanuts, a metric that we talk about a lot in the program called heart rate variability, which is kind of the set point between the fight or flight system and the rest, repair, digest system in your body. So my heart rate variability would plummet, meaning it would get worse because now my body was feeling attacked by these peanuts that were causing inflammation. And so I took peanuts out of my diet, and lo and behold, my sleep got better. Like I was getting more rested sleep, right? So a lot of times we're not connecting these things, or that, how much does that late night Cabernet or rosé, or in my wife's case, Prosecco, right? Like how much does that really affect your health? For some people, it's more than others, right? And so we can't think of everybody as just one person. What we have to do is personalize the approach, personalize what's going on. So there's a specific diet where I put people on this anti-inflammatory cardiometabolic diet for 6 weeks, and we basically hit the reset button. In the old computer days, if you remember before, like in the DOS days, like I don't know if anybody here is old enough to remember those, but I certainly do. And you had interrupt codes on your computer. So if you added a software, all of a sudden your printer would stop working, right? Or whatever it may be. So what did you have to do? You had to like delete everything off your hard drive, add in programs one by one, see exactly where the disconnect happened, and then you had to start over, reconnect, and then build it in correctly. So that's kind of what we do biologically. Now we can't just hit a reset button. I haven't found that button anywhere on me yet. But what we do with diet then is for 6 weeks, offer this very low inflammatory diet. And that's this amazing reset where your body falls back into kind of the health state that it's supposed to be. We leverage your biochemistry to switch your body into a fat burn mode as opposed to a carbohydrate burn mode. This is similar to what happens in a ketogenic diet, though with ketogenic diets, I get really nervous because if you're doing it correctly, you're eating 80 to 90% of your food as fat, which I don't think is the right thing to do. So as a cardiologist, it gives me pause, right? It gives me palpitations. So instead, what we do is a very approachable diet called the 40-30-30, 40% carbs, 30% protein, 30% fats, which is what we should normally be eating anyway. But we leverage kind of intermittent fasting and some breath work techniques and things to flip this switch into the fat burn mode. And that's really where we start to see people's health improve. We're getting rid of that visceral fat, dropping a lot of inflammation. In fact, surprisingly, or unsurprising to me, but surprising to a lot of clients, is in that first week, oftentimes they'll lose like 7 to 8 pounds. And that's not fat weight, but that's releasing that inflammation, getting rid of the inflammation. And just that alone, they feel so much better. I mean, on Zooms, right? Like there was a big Botox revolution because everyone was seeing their face on Zoom and realized how many wrinkles they had and stuff. Well, people are noticing on Zooms. We do a weekly live session with clients, and week over week, I can see people like, "Wow, your skin is glowing," because we've gotten rid of this inflammation. It's visible to me at least as a clinician. So in the program, you're logging your food online. Everyone has a personal coach, so it's not like an AI, GPT, anything like that. I think that while there is a role for that, what I want to do is really make this a very bespoke program for people because, Darlene's going to be different than Jennifer, is going to be different than Kelly, is going to be different than Ginger, right? Just because your names are on the call right in front of me, right? I don't want you to feel like called out. Uh, but um, and a one size fits most isn't good enough here. We're really trying to improve health outcomes. So you have a personal coach that's guiding you. Everybody gets wearable devices, so everyone gets. I used to use the ring based device, but it's kind of a flex. But so many people were losing so much weight that at the end of the program they couldn't wear the ring anymore. So I had to go to an adjustable device so that we could get long term outcomes, and that becomes the dashboard for your body. And so you're seeing your metrics, you're looking at your heart rate variability, you're looking at your sleep, you're connecting the dots between your diet and what happens, and we kind of guide you through that process. That uploads into the software that I use. Also, we send out a body composition scale to everybody so that information uploads, so we can track what your weight looks like, your muscle mass, your fat percentage. And if you do end up stalling, as some people do, the coaches are able to get in and take an intervention. But we're really aiming to improve outcomes. And while we're on that subject, health outcomes are remarkable. So on average in the program so far, women lose about 23 pounds, guys about 28 pounds in the first 8 weeks, which is more actually than the GLP-1 medications. Don't get me started on GLP-1s yet, but it's more than that. But because we're teaching the lifestyle habits around it, it becomes much more sustainable, right? Without meds, without drugs, without side effects. And now you're reading about all these side effects like Ozempic face and this retinopathy that's happening where people are going blind from this, and it's as predictable as the sun coming up in the east and setting in the west for any of us who've been in medicine, because I've seen now several cycles of weight loss meds and they all have complications. The scariest of which was fen-phen. If that sounds familiar to everybody, but it actually caused
80s, the
heart
80s.
heart valve damage. I mean, I was the recipient early on in my career of probably more, I'd say over like 50 to 100 patients who ended up needing heart surgery, heart valve replacements because fen-phen caused heart valve issues to where their valves fell apart and they would have died otherwise. So, nothing in medicine exists without consequence when you're talking about pharmacotherapies and drugs. They're all toxins to a certain extent. But, if we can do this with just getting you to sleep better, getting you to understand how your body works, getting you to not necessarily get rid of stress, but giving you like breath work and other tools to bring that stress down. When our bodies are in fight or flight mode, you can never heal, right? Think about if you break your leg, what do? You immobilize it, right? You don't run harder, right? Unless you're like David Goggins or one of these kind of crazy ultra marathon Navy SEAL kind of guys. If you guys don't know David Goggins, he's like one of these, spit fire and fart thunder, and he ran an ultra marathon with a broken leg, which is not something that I advise.
Okay.
but you know, what do? We need to be in that rest, repair, digest mode for our bodies to recover. And when you're multitasking, when you're not sleeping, when you are getting light from the wrong source, if you're late night, if you're getting LED lights that are coming in from above you, like in a can light, that tricks your body into thinking that it's noon. You have photoreceptors in the back of your eye that are not just looking at the color of light, but the directionality of light, right? That's something that people don't know. So I mean, in my house, we have above head, like can lights, but I don't use them anymore because now I have floor level lights with yellow bulbs to mimic kind of what light needs to look like. So all these things that people don't realize, that's what we teach. And the outcomes are remarkable. In fact, I just have a guy who's on the program. He's a patient that I had ended up treating for a heart attack years ago. He lost touch with me, and then he found me through my Instagram, and said, "You know what, Doctor B, I want to sign up. If you're doing it, I'm down. You know, I loved you when you were in clinical practice, and I'm just going to do whatever it is that you say." And as of this morning, he was down 28 pounds in 4 weeks by just eating well and sleeping well and managing his stress, because we do not realize the toll that our lives, the stress, the sleep deprivation, all of these things take on us. So, you know, it's remarkable to see how well the body recovers and how quickly it heals when you give it what it needs, right? It's like putting like diesel fuel in an unleaded engine, right? Yeah, I guess it's gas, right? But it's not the right gas designed for that engine, right? So when you put the right fuel in there, everything just fires better. And when you get the right mindset, and my folks who are coaches, you know this exactly, right? If you have the right mindset, if you have the right approach to things, it can make such a big difference. And our bodies are no different.
It's awesome. It's awesome. Does anybody have any questions or comments as we work through this?
How did you identify the heart rate change when you ate peanuts? Like,
Mm.
how did you identify it as peanuts as opposed to whatever else you're eating at
Yeah.
that time?
So, as with any scientific system, and I'm a super nerd, don't get me talking about things, but you basically change one thing in the system at a time, right? So we hit the reset button, and then in the program, then so during the first 6 weeks, you're doing this kind of very clean diet, and then the second 6 weeks, you're working with your coach as you're reintroducing foods. We want you to introduce foods no more frequently than one new food every 48 to 72 hours, because it can take that long, excuse me, it can take that long for your body to manifest a
Yeah.
result. So when through the wearable device, we track something, and I'll spend a little time talking about it because I've mentioned a few times, tracking something called heart rate variability. So your heart, let's just say, beats at 60 beats per minute, right? And for any of you who've had, like, you've been a musician, you have a metronome that keeps track of the, you know, that tick 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 keeps track. And so every 1,000 milliseconds or whatever it is, you'll get a click, right? Well, in our heart, it doesn't happen that way. When you have a 60 beat per minute on average, you have this variation in milliseconds between each beat. And we look at that as a measure of how stressed you are, meaning if you're more stressed out, then you get less variability and it's much more like a metronome. And if you're relaxed, you get a lot more variability, right? And so in the medical terms, we call that sympathetic dominance. Sympathetic nervous system is that fight or flight system, versus parasympathetic dominant. Parasympathetic nervous system is the cool down nervous system. So when you think of, like, my dog is not here with me right now, he has his dog bed right here, but that guy, Ziggy, cute Labradoodle, is like sleeping like 28 hours out of a 24-hour day, right? Because that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be in relaxed mode most of the time. And then the Amazon truck goes by and then he barks, right? Because the Amazon delivery guy comes to our front desk and then, or our front door, and then he goes back to sleep, right? Like, that's kind of how we're designed, is that we're supposed to just kind of be in this relaxed mode most of the time. And when we need to, we can call upon our bodies to give us that extra boost of energy for whatever is coming our way, like the threat of an Amazon guy delivering a package at my front door, right? To Zig. But our lives aren't that way, right? Like, we are multitasking. You're taking phone calls. If you're like me, you're taking multiple time zones, not just in the United States, but I'll sometimes have a 4 in the morning meeting with India because the software developers over there, that's their 2 o'clock in the afternoon, or whatever it may be. So this multitasking puts our body, or our mind at least, in this kind of go 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 kind of mode, multitasking, fielding phone calls and emails. I mean, the worst thing to happen to all of us, I think, was the crackberry. Did you guys have the blackberry once upon a time, right? And you'd see that little red light on there, and you're like, oh my God, I have to check this email at like 2 in the morning. Like, I think of my life before then, right, where email was like a once or twice a day thing to now being constantly connected. So we're constantly connected, constantly, and with that constant connection comes a need for constant connection because we're all putting out fires in our lives, right? So everything is go go go, fight or flight. Any like I'm anybody, everyone raise your hand if you've had the, oh, what's going to happen today? Have you ever had that like when you wake up, like what terror will befall me today, right? So that's just the world that we're living in, and mentally that stress puts us in a biologic state of terror, right? It put, like, imagine if a tiger jumps out from behind you, or Beth, you were talking about raccoons in your house, right? Like, imagine that you're being attacked by wild animals all the time. That's the biological reaction that we're getting at a much lower volume, but that's the biological thing that we're getting from checking our emails and watching that extra episode of whatever TV show you're watching so you can't sleep correctly, and having the blue light from LED bulbs kind of affecting our brains. These are all these death by a thousand paper cuts things that add up. So getting back to the question about the peanuts, so what I saw is that when I ate peanuts, because that was the only thing that I had changed, and I could not wait to get peanuts back in my diet, my heart rate variability dropped by about 25 points. And that was just a handful of peanuts. Like, so I realized, huh, what's going on here? And then I tried it again and saw that same drop. And then I looked at my sleep, and what was happening, you have 4 stages of sleep plus REM, was that I wasn't getting enough of that restorative stage 4 REM sleep. I was kind of staying like in the shallow sleep phases again, because what's the last thing you're going to do when you're running away from a tiger is take a nap, right? So when your body feels like it's under stress, it's being attacked, the last thing it's going to do is allow you to have restful sleep. So I was getting quantity of sleep, yes, but my quality of sleep wasn't there. And that then has this feed forward cycle that affects our health, your blood pressure. There's even some literature out there that shows that people with lower heart rate variabilities are more susceptible to infection, have higher rates of cancer, higher rates of heart disease, and things like that. So we really need to take control of this. And the nice thing is that now it's so available to us with any number of wearable devices. I feel like I'm the Mr. T of the digital world with all these devices that I'm wearing, but we can get access into that information. Most people just don't know how to read it, right? So that's a big part of the program, is teaching you the dashboard, so to speak, of your body to kind of take a look every morning and see where you're at and diagnose things. Jennifer, does that answer your question?
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, I recently worked on a diabetes management project and the continuous glucose monitoring
Yeah, CGMs.
space, along with better eating, better, tailored to you. And so I was curious about how you were taking that measurement, but you told me.
Yeah, good. Darlene, did you have a question? I see your hand up before. No, she
No,
knows.
this is all completely tracking with my health journey. The stuff that you're talking about, the things that are important. Some of them I've been successful at changing and do a lot. I'm in a like good space with, and then especially like when you talk about like the diet, that's the hardest thing in the world for me. I will do really well and I'll like do an elimination diet, kind of like you were talking about. And then I don't always feel like I feel a difference. So then I get my hands into a bag of spicy nacho Doritos, or I go to a birthday party and they have a charcuterie board of deliciousness and I dive back in. And I have a really hard time noticing what's actually causing the inflammation in my body and what's triggering it. I feel like I'm been on a journey for probably like 15 years at this point, trying to figure out what actually is causing inflammation in my body and not getting the right
Yeah, well,
then.
I mean, it's funny that you bring up that point, because for people that struggle with that, there's actually testing that I do to look at, and I can actually just pull it up. I just randomly pulled up my own here. Am I able to share?
Yeah, you
Um,
can.
all right, cool. Let me pull this up. But there are tests now that can be done. Let me see.
Yep, you can share. I made sure.
All
Okay.
right, share, and we'll share this. Testing. Can you see my screen here?
Uh-huh.
That this thing is pretty remarkable. This test. It looks at 172. I think it was 172 or 176. Um, different foods. This is my personal test, so don't share with. I guess I'm violating my own HIPAA, but I'm sharing it with you guys.
Is this similar
But
to
I
like a
got
blood allergy test or
so
what?
it's like, well, it's not an allergy test, right? Because allergy will just tell you what your throat's going to close up with, right? But this is what are the foods that you're sensitive to, and it tracks so well. For me, I'll just kind of share a couple. Let me see if I can zoom in here. Sorry for the. I should have. This should have come with like a Dramamine warning, but For instance, when I look at protein and I do protein shakes, I don't do well with whey protein. I know this about myself. And I can see here, oh, yeah, sure enough, my body has a sensitivity with that. A lot of people have a lot of issues and inflammation that happens with egg. I can do this just fine. So, all of these protein, cow's milk, casein, goat's milk, and whey, I don't do well with. I haven't been to Whole Foods to buy sheep's milk. I don't know if it's readily, maybe I have to buy a sheep now.
Yes.
But that's something that I learned. And then as I go through this, they look at all the different um, types of grains, and I do pretty well with grains. Acai is supposed to be healthy. This is one of the things. This is one of the things I talk about a lot in the program. Is what may be considered healthy for most may not be healthy for you. So look at here with acai. Now this is a mild reaction, and blueberries I have a moderate reaction to. Right? Everybody knows blueberries are healthy, right? Like you're supposed
Blueberries are
to
like the best for inflammation, they say.
you're supposed to eat a handful of blueberries and you can live forever, so they say in the world, right? But for me personally, that doesn't track, right? But to be able to get to this point, right? Now here, look, I've got honeydew, kiwi, all these different things. Potatoes I do great with. Corn, unsurprisingly. Summer squash, I don't eat summer squash, so that's not a big deal. Arugula, I can't think of the last time I had arugula, so not a
Arugula
big
is my
deal.
favorite.
But the point of this is that once you can't do this testing that I talked about unless we've done that elimination phase, because what happens when you're not feeling well, and this is one of the central cores of the idea of functional medicine, is that we have this thing called leaky gut, where the intestinal epithelial lining, so all the cells that line our intestines, actually get damaged from the foods that we eat, and they let these toxins into our system. And so what you want to do first before you do any testing like this is do this elimination type phase, that what I call the release phase in the program, so that you're healing your gut. Then you do a program or a test like this, because now at this point we'll be able to see what you're reacting against as like in a much more kind of tactical fashion, because when your gut is leaky it just shows reaction to everything, right? So if you were to do this without in an unthinking manner, then you'd be like, oh my gosh, what can I eat, right? How many of you have you ever been in that situation where it's like, oh my gosh, everything I eat is everything on this no list. What do I just eat air? Like I hear that all the time. I'm like, no, we just have to figure out what works for you. So something like that, once you've gone through the first kind of phase of the program, like a more directed testing like that may be helpful. And then I have a nutritionist that I work with that can then help you design a diet if that's something that you need, right? Because how do you avoid amaranth, which I'm not allergic to, or I don't have, or I guess I do have a moderate reaction. I don't even know what that is, right? But maybe it's hiding in foods that I eat every day. Maybe some, cracker that I eat, or some bread that I buy has amaranth in it that I don't know about. And so, a lot of these things we can kind of work through and work around in individual diets. But that's why this isn't like a GPT model. That's why it's a bespoke human on the other end model, because I really want to make people better. And you can't just say one size fits all. I think of Henry Ford. I did my fellowship at Henry Ford Hospital, and he said you can have the Model T in any color you want as long as it's black, right? That doesn't really work for healthcare, right? I can't say, oh yeah, you can have any health you want as long as you do XYZ, because what works for one person works for one person, and we need to realize that it's not a one size fits all.
No, that makes sense. Makes sense. So, what do they do once they clear the program? How do they?
Yeah. So the idea with the 12 weeks is that we're really giving you the diet and the lifestyle and the creating the habits, right? It takes 90 days to create a habit, right? So we're 6 days short with 84 days in the 12 weeks, but well 13 just didn't seem like a very good numerology number, right? So well 12, it just rolls off the tongue. But really the idea is that now we've ingrained the habits to for success, and so you can continue along your merry way. That's how it was designed. And then I had a lot of people that were like, you know what, we still kind of want to stay in. What can we do? I run live Saturday sessions, so we didn't talk about the program, but in the 12 weeks, there's a new lecture of the week that drips out. It's like a foundations in like how to optimize digestion, how to optimize sleep, how to do these things. And then every Saturday, I run a live session where we do 20 minutes of breath work. And then I have a topic of the week that we talk about. This past week, we talked about blood sugar spikes and the biology of cravings, right? To your point, Darlene, is that when you see something, why do you crave something? Well, it's your cells telling you that they need something that they're not getting, is essentially kind of the molecular biology of that. And as you are providing the proper nutrition, and a lot of the program participants agreed, those cravings just miraculously melted away because they didn't feel that biological desire anymore, any more than you can, like, as a guy, I can't think of growing a beard as much as I tried when I was a teenager, right? The hormones have to work correctly, and then things happen, right? Or you can't think your way out of a period. It just kind of happens based on hormones. So similarly, cravings are biologically mediated, biologically driven by hormones. And so the hormones are the only way that your cells have to talk to your brain. But as long as you're giving your body what it needs, that signal goes down, that signal dampens, right? So anyway, that was what we talked about this past week. So we're teaching you kind of things, and we're optimizing health, and doing all these things in 12 weeks to get these habits ingrained. But some people wanted to stay in, so there's a membership, a monthly membership, where you get access to the Saturday sessions. We have special coaching sessions that are specific to people who graduated the program, which is fun, and that's a cool thing. Or for people that have a lot of weight to lose, and they want to go through another round of the coaching part, the coaching aspect of the program, then there's something called Quick Six for that as well. I think my biggest success was with a gentleman that I worked with. He was in the operating room with me when I used to do procedures, and he ended up dropping about 140 pounds after doing the program. He cycled through 4 times, but it completely changed his life. I live in Southern California, and he said that he had wanted to surf all his life, but he could never go to a surf shop and find a wetsuit that fit him, right? So imagine that, right? Like, you take the time, you go, and look, all of us know bathing suits not the most comfortable thing to shop for, right? For most of us. I can't speak to everybody, but certainly for me, not it, right? So you go to the store, right? You ask, do you have a wetsuit in my size? And they're like, oh, sorry, we can't help you, right? So for the first time, he was able to, he dropped the weight. This was about midway on his journey. Bought a wetsuit. I took him out surfing with me. I pushed him into waves. He stood up on a wave. I mean, it was just a glorious moment for the both of us, because he was a client, but also a friend of mine from the hospital. And then as he continued, that wetsuit got too loose, and so he had to go out and buy a new wetsuit, right? Which I thought was awesome, right? The disclosure is that the unintended cost of the program is that you probably have to go buy a new wardrobe. And my wife gleefully did that when she did her program. But he cycled through a couple of times. So the idea is not that now we just handshake and you're gone. You can stay in the program either just for the learning, or if you have more to get to your goal, then we've got that available to people as well.
Okay, great. That's good. Lorraine or Kelly or Ginger, any questions?
Nothing for
Thoughts?
me. I appreciate hearing the description of what you're doing, and I like that you focused on those top three things. That when you think about sleep, stress, and diet, those are really factors I think that we all have to deal with.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that you put that as the foundation. So I'm going to think about how I need to address all that.
Yeah,
Thank
and the
you.
fourth is movement, which we add in later, right? Because
Mhm.
exercise and building muscle is definitely part of it. And we don't have to raise hands here, but I mean, I've certainly kind of yo-yoed up and down through my life. I tell this story only to my closest friends, but I grew up in the middle of nowhere, Indiana, a town called
Mm.
Hobart, Indiana. If anyone is familiar, I wouldn't expect that you are. And I remember when we got a Gap, right? Like the Gap, right? It was a big deal. South Lake Mall, Gary, Indiana, or Maryville, Indiana, big deal. And prior to that, I had only ever bought clothes at Sears, right? Which most of us, hopefully, some of us on the call know what Sears is. I tell people Sears is like what Amazon is now, but like in person. That's when I describe what
Yeah,
Sears is to my
that's
kids.
true.
That's
And
true.
so invariably, when we would go to Sears, I'd have to buy pants in the Husky Boy section. Um, and so I remember when we walked into the Gap, and it was super cool, and they were playing, like, the music from, one of the 80s thing, it was just great. And my mom goes in her Indian accent, which at the loudest possible volume that I think she's ever spoken in her life, yelled across the thing to the salespeople, "Hey, where's the Husky Boy section?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed," right? Like, it's crazy. So I know the struggle is real. But what the point of that is, when people are yo-yoing up and down, maybe you're restricting calories, so you're focusing on the, count this many points or that many points. But what we're not focusing on is the stress, right? The hormonal milieu of stress will create the desire for your body to get more calories because your body feels that it's in a calorie restricted state in an environment where it needs to hang on to calories. Anybody who's ever come from home from a stressful day and you need to have that piece of chocolate or that bag of chips or whatever it may be, that's cortisol. That's your stress hormone, right? So if you're not dealing with stress, no matter how much it can actually work against you because you're restricting calories so much, you're getting your brain is thinking, oh my gosh, I'm in this danger state. It starts to secrete more cortisol, more of the stress hormone out, and then it becomes inevitable that you will fail because again, you can't outpace your hormones, right? Similarly, when you sleep and you give your body the rest that it needs, you're calming down those hormones of stress. You're addressing these things, and that puts your body in a situation where it can heal correctly and it can start to function correctly. And as you nourish yourselves, give yourselves the micronutrients and the macronutrients that you need. Sorry, I'm getting nerdy with my language, but you guys are all smart people. Then a lot of it just unlocks, and that's what people kind of tell me in their feedback is I just feel like everything got unlocked and my body's working the way it should. So yeah, Ms. Baines, I agree. A lot of like you need to focus on that stress, and that's probably all of us in this Zoom room, right? Focus on how to stress less and live more. And I do that primarily through breath work. So we do a live breath work session on Saturday, and then twice a week, a pre-recorded breath work session drips out to people so that you can do that breath work. And it's amazing. Like if you guys just right now, we could do a quick exercise in breath work. I call this breath sips. So what we want to do is stand up, or not stand up. Sorry, sit up. Sorry, everyone was making the move, and put your one hand on your chest, one hand on your belly, and you want your belly to move here a lot, right? But what I want you to do, and you can come off camera, you can turn off your camera if you're kind of nervous about it, but take a deep breath in all the way. Your belly should go out, meaning whatever the hand is on your abdomen should go out more than the one on your chest. Take a deep breath all the way in. And just when you think you've taken as much air in as you can, I want you to take 3 breath sips. So it'll sound like this. Really top off, hold there, and then breathe out, right? And if you've done it correctly, you might feel a little bit of a head rush or like a whoa, a little woozy. What we're doing there with our breath work is giving our brain the acute sign that something is going on. I need to calm down immediately. So this is something I talk about with like my daughters who are student athletes. Before you go to serve in volleyball or before a big point, do that. Get used to it. Number one, don't be woozy when you're about to serve, but do it enough to where you can kind of use that as a tool to then kind of realize, okay, I can calm down myself. I don't, the anxiety doesn't spin out of control. I can actually control this, right? And there's a certain amount of confidence that comes with that ability just to control. But I have a technique that I can do to calm down in this situation before I'm about to go out into the student council debate or whatever it may be that they have coming. I know that there's something I can do. Or I've got a big PowerPoint presentation, or we got the multinational team is all coming in and I have to do XYZ, right? That's a quick free tip tool for you guys to use when you're about to give the presentation or have the meeting or whatever it may be to calm down acutely, right? So it's just little things like that you can do. Tactical things like at a stoplight, I do box breathing. Like how many of us I kind of think of when I get all red lights. You ever have that where you're driving and it's all red lights? Like that's God telling me to take a moment of pause. And so I learned, you know what, I need to take advantage of that. I'm going to do a box breath, which is taking a deep breath in for a count of 4, holding for a count of 4, breathe out for a count of 4, and hold for a count of 4. But it's little things like that you can do to calm your brain down so you're not as reactive, but you also function a lot better. So that's a lot of what we focus on.
Awesome. Awesome. Any final questions before we sign off for the day? And then, Dr. Sanjay, if you have any literature or anything you want me to send out, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
I
So
sent through the link.
we'll send that out, and we're doing. So I am an affiliate with C-Suite. So we have, for members of the program of C-Suite, we have a discount code available to do the.
I'll send that out to the group as well.
Yeah, that would be great. And, I think, and I also, just for anybody who cares, I think that we always are better when we run in packs. So I do a couple or / partner discount. So if you have like a business partner, a life partner, or spouse or someone that you want to do this with, because not only are we improving cardiovascular outcomes, which is important, we're improving health outcomes, which is important, but like when my wife and I did this program together, it made us closer because we became each other's cheerleaders. Like oddly, like not a sentence that most of us would say, but we couldn't wait to hop on the scale in the morning to see what happened because we were making such great progress, right? And we quickly became each other's greatest cheerleaders, but also we became each other's accountability partners, which is a big deal because if I was trying to sneak Cheetos, what was it? Spicy Cheetos, spicy Doritos, whatever it was.
Spicy
You know, if I was
Doritos.
spicy nacho Doritos, if I was trying to sneak something like that in, she would call me out and kept me on the straight and narrow. But like the remarkable thing about that was for me, as I started to see the success that she was having, I became happy. As she started seeing the success I had, she became happy, and that forced us to be more vigilant and more strict with ourselves, so that we could increase the emotional happiness in the house. So I know it's nerdy and metaphysical and all that stuff, but it's just amazing how this stuff works, and it really is healing. So yeah, I hope that if you've got someone that you know, someone that you love, someone that you don't like, but you want to have live around for a while, whatever it may be, then certainly reach out. If you are practitioners, and you think of some clients that you want, I can white label the program, so it's me on the back end, and you can build a front end around visits or whatever you want. So I've done that with a couple of therapists in my area, and they've seen improved outcomes in their therapy patients, and I'm sure coaching patients as well. I haven't had a business coach do that yet, but certainly something that we can play with.
Well, that's awesome. And we thank you very much. I'll get that out later today to everybody. And you can follow him on Instagram too. I do, and it's fun to watch him. And of course, follow C-Suite too. But anyways, I'll send all that out to you, and love to see everybody's future success. And I'm sure everybody would like more sleep.
Well,
Yes.
it's not it's like Mr. Miyagi. Don't worry about the quantity of karate, the quality of karate that right, or whatever it was that he said. So you can have shortened sleep quantity, but if you're getting great quality of sleep, that's good too. And for those of you who are
Okay.
wondering, 7.5 hours seems to be the sweet spot of sleep. Aim for 7.5 hours.
That would be a dream. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Have a
Thanks so
fantastic
much.
day.
Thank
All
you
right,
so much,
guys.
Sanjay.
Thank
I
you
look forward
all.
to hearing from you.
Bye, everyone.
All
Have a
right.
great
Bye-bye.
one.